Country 1430 AM and 107.3 FM WRDN. This is the WRDN Morning Farm Report. I'm Brian Winnekins. Joining us this morning is Laura Langworthy. She is Director of Special Projects with the Wisconsin Farmers Union. We're going to talk about a recent report that the Wisconsin Farmers Union developed and released. And thank you to our newsmaker sponsors, including Compeer Financial, Synergy Co-op, Animal Wellness Center of Buffalo Valley, Annabis Silo, along with Osteoplastics, Alcivia Co-op, and the Wisconsin Farmers Union. And Lauren, thank you for joining us this morning. Well, first, I guess, tell us a little bit about this report. How was it developed?
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here today. Thank you. This was a really interesting process, really. Wisconsin Farmers Union is a member-based organization, and our members highlight certain policy that's important in the coming year through a democratic process. And through that process, meat processing has been an issue the last 2 years. And so we convened a task force of members and had conversations with processors, farmers, labor representatives, and even consumers around the state to figure out what exactly are the issues and what are some potential solutions. And this report is what came out of all those conversations.
So let's talk, I guess, first about the issues you found out from those interviews with farmers and meat processors. What were some of the issues?
Well, I think at the heart of all of this, we have a really large problem in that we have a lot of consolidation happening in the meat processing sector. For those who are a little bit less familiar, there are 4 companies that actually control over 80% of the US feedlot cattle supply. And the big 4 companies in pork, poultry, and beef, sorry, my tongue there, all control between 55 and 85% of their marketplace. And so with that kind of consolidation, what we're seeing is they control the prices. Many of these companies have been accused of price fixing now, and they just have such sway in the marketplace that smaller scale processors, family size processors, really can't compete. And so we're losing those small businesses all around our state and really all around our country. That in turn impacts farmers' ability to actually bring their meat to market and consumers' ability to have choice.
We are talking with Laura Langworthy this morning. She is Director of Special Projects with the Wisconsin Farmers Union, talking about a recent report from Wisconsin Farmers Union titled Meat Processing in Wisconsin, Challenges and Opportunities. And Lauren, I know in talking with some of our processors around here in Western Wisconsin, they've seen there's a real big backup. If I have some cattle I need to have processed, I better have made those arrangements already for 2022 and even for the first part of 2023.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's something we've been hearing since really before the pandemic, but it certainly was only aggravated in the last 2 years as people booked dates for their harvesting. We had struggles with labor, making sure that those small scale processors have enough people to do the work. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of small scale processors have gone under during this last few years. And that has really impacted those that remain with bottlenecks.
We're talking with Laura Langworthy. She is Director of Special Projects with the Wisconsin Farmers Union this morning. So Lauren, what were some of the suggestions, I guess, from those that you talked with about how to solve maybe some of these supply chain issues?
Yeah, it's very interesting speaking with people from different perspectives on this issue. From a farmer perspective, we want to make sure that we have access to processing. We want to make sure we don't have to haul our livestock too far because those transport costs and the stress on the animals and the farmer are all intense. So we want to make sure that we have good access and good prices. The processors are looking at really a need for capital. It's a very capital intensive business to expand and meet the demand. And so they need help in terms of maybe grants or low cost loans. And they also need access to labor. And what we heard from labor is that we need more training opportunities, low cost training, like apprenticeship programs where they can have high skills and get in on the work. And then, we also heard from consumers that we need better understanding of what's going on and better labeling so that they can make informed decisions and not help support some of the bad actors.
We're talking with Lauren Langworthy this morning. She is Director of Operations with the Wisconsin, or Director of Special Projects, rather, with Wisconsin Farmers Union this morning as we continue to talk a little bit about the recent report, Meat Processing in Wisconsin, Challenges and Opportunities. You mentioned the capital for some of these smaller processors. There are some things out there from USDA, state of Wisconsin, and that sort of thing. One of the things that some of the processors have said to me in the past has been the ability to apply for these grants is very cumbersome and it's very difficult. And a lot of times they don't even know about it. But if they do know about it, it's very, very difficult to even apply. Did you hear that too?
A little bit, certainly. There are some opportunities through DATCAP and WEDIC at the state level in particular to help support some of these small scale processors in expanding their operations and meeting the need. But certainly if you don't know about the opportunity or aren't able to access those opportunities, that it's not much help. And very much like farmers, processors, they're jacks of all trade, working long hours, very hard work, not easy work. And so to add on the paperwork of applying to grants and paying attention to all the opportunities out there is a heavy ask. So, those of us who aren't in the processing sector can also keep an eye out on those opportunities and try and help our local processors to apply for them if we have the ability to do so.
From the farmer's perspective, because of these supply chain backups, because of, trying to get livestock in for harvesting and processing, are they struggling on what do we do with our herds? How do we plan for 2022 and 2023 when we really don't know what's happening? Or are they just going to have to take that leap and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to make some appointments to have cattle that have, or livestock that hasn't even been born yet, to have it processed in 2023?
Absolutely. That's been a big question for a lot of farmers, and everyone is making their own decisions, so you highlighted a couple of different options, but I know quite a few folks, my own farm included, we have processing dates booked now for animals that either aren't born or are little calves and will be 2 years out. There are also people who are looking at trying to sell off to the auction houses and maybe reduce their herd size. That poses another problem in that those auction houses, fewer and fewer of them are also family-run businesses. So they're kind of tied up in this whole mess as well. But there are a lot of different people trying to figure out the best way to proceed. And I think many of us who sell direct to consumers are trying really hard to support those local processors and make sure they stay in business. But anyone who's mid-scale or larger scale is certainly tied up in what opportunities are available and who's making it available to them. And it really reduces the number of options you have.
Talking with Lauren Langworthy. She's Director of Special Projects with Wisconsin Farmers Union this morning. We're talking about the recent report, Meat Processing in Wisconsin, Challenges and Opportunities, that Wisconsin Farmers Union has recently released. You mentioned the direct to consumers, or consumers are going to these small processors in their communities to buy. They want to buy direct, they want to buy local, they want to know where their food's coming from. Because of all of these issues, are we missing an opportunity here? Because again, if we don't have the supply, or if the supply is backed up, well, we can't sell it. But if we don't have labor really on both ends of the spectrum here at the farm and at the processor, we can't cover the demand for those consumers. So is there an opportunity that we're potentially missing here if we can't kind of figure this out?
Absolutely. I think especially in the last 2 years through the COVID pandemic, we saw the fragility of the really large consolidated meat packer players. They had COVID running through their operations. They weren't able to get labor. And we saw huge backups. We saw massive price increases and empty shelves in a lot of grocery stores. And that scared consumers, rightfully so. And so there are a lot of people now who are looking at these local food systems and thinking that they would like to support such a thing. They see that it's a lot more stable, a lot safer for them, and they get to support their neighbors, which is also a positive thing. And so we really do want to be helping consumers to access that meat. And it's very tricky, especially in the labeling front, to help consumers understand exactly what they're buying. If they're not going to a local butcher or working with a local farmer, the labeling can be quite tricky. It might say product of the USA, it might say USDA inspected, or it might say grass fed, and they might not know what exactly those labels mean or who's enforcing them. And one of the big issues that we have, especially with this really consolidated meat packing international issue, a lot of our meat is being imported and it's just being cut here in the US and packaged here and then being sold with that USDA stamp on it. And so consumers believe that they're supporting domestic farmers when in reality this beef might be grown in Brazil or somewhere far away and shipped in. And so we really need to work on the labeling too. There's some things called country of origin labeling and other labeling opportunities that could help our consumers really understand what they're buying and therefore make the choices that they would like to make.
Talking with Lauren Langworthy, Director of Special Projects with Wisconsin Farmers Union this morning. So Lauren, where does this report go to now?
Well, we've released this report out into the wild and we're hoping that it will spark some good conversations. There are a lot of exciting things happening on both the state and federal level. And so we're hoping that this report can help further those conversations. Conversations about the Packers and Stockyards Act of 1921. It's been 100 years. And we need to really strengthen that. We need to address some of the issues that are still leaving loopholes for some of the bad actors in our meat processing sector. We also need to be making sure that we're well funding those DATCAP grants, those WEDIC grants, and other opportunities to support our local farmers and processors and laborers. There are also exciting opportunities in terms of developing labor education. And the more people understand this issue, the more likely they will be to advocate for these things.
Again, that is Lauren Langworthy. She is Director of Special Projects with the Wisconsin Farmers Union. Again, you can visit the Wisconsin Farmers Union website to read that report. It's titled Meat Processing in Wisconsin, Challenges and Opportunities. You're listening to the WRDN Morning Farm Report.